Hey there, I'm Brad Miller, and I'm with Jason Medford today, and we're talking about fire.
Fire, fire,
Exactly.
fire,
Exactly,
fire.
Beavis. We are talking about the elements, and specifically, we're going to talk about the element of fire. We've talked a little bit, but we've mentioned the elements, stuff like that before, the different things, earth, wind, fire, and water. Um, And so I figure maybe it would be a good time now to, kind of talk about why these are kind of important and specifically we'll kind of go into fire because I know for you, Jason, that fire is kind of an important one that you kind of feel a connection to and stuff. So um why I mean let's start about why are the elements important? The earth, wind, fire, water. Why is that an important thing for people?
Well, so from if you go to shamanic or Native American traditions, the elements, and a lot of times they're called, platonic solids, shamanic elements. And usually, again, it's either four or five, depending on if people add the fifth element, which is ether. Um, but
Or
but
love,
mo
depending on which movie you're watching.
the actually, there's a lot. You've seen The Fifth Element? Okay. Yeah, that's one of our favorite shows. Okay. Anyway,
Mhm.
um, and we'll get there too, but anyway, we're going to start basic. Okay. In talking
Yeah.
about this, because I think that, I mean, like Brad said, fire is important to me. Not because I'm a pyromaniac. Okay. But I have a strong connection with fire. Why? One reason is I'm a Leo. That's a fire sign zodiac. Okay. Uh, and there's some other reasons. I'll just say I'm a little sun, and some of you might know what that means, but we're going to talk about fire. Okay. Because if you think about and I'll just use probably kind of some Native American and shamanic type of language and talking about what I'm referring to, okay? But you see this crop up, like I said, it's most notable and public from like a Native American perspective, but these things are true in a lot of other spiritual traditions and practices. Okay, I'm just talking about it kind of from my understanding and what I think most of the people that are listening, it's going to make more sense to you.
Mhm.
And so in Native American tradition, there's a thing called the medicine wheel. Okay. And so usually it's represented as a circle with a cross in the middle of it. Okay. And so it's a sacred geometry pattern as well, circle with a cross in the middle of it. Now the cross represents cardinal points. And so when I'm saying cardinal points, think of a compass, right? Like I was a Boy Scout, I was an Eagle Scout. So we used to, have to go out and
Orienteering and
orienteering and mountaineering, merit badges, right? We had to use a compass and be able to look at a map and use the compass and go different places. So if you think about, right, uh, a compass, north, south, east, and west, okay? Well, line that up with this medicine wheel that I'm talking about. And this is where you start to see the elements come into play. And because it's the interaction and the alchemy between the elements allow you to do certain things. And we won't get into more detail about that because this is going to be like very elementary, but it may still blow a lot of socks off of people that have never heard this before. Okay. Because, um, so I'll just talk about medicine wheel, north, south, east, west. Okay. So these different elements, air, water, fire, earth, are associated with those cardinal points. So again, imagine if you're looking at a compass ahead of you, north would be at the top, and north is associated with the element of air. East is associated with the element of fire. South is associated with the element of earth, and west is associated with the element of water. And I'm just going to talk about those elements, but there's actually beings, there's animals, there's other um, things that are associated with it, and especially even from, again, Native American, kind of the four elements that are talked about there are the sacred medicines is tobacco, sage, cedar, and sweetgrass. Those are all associated with the elements too. And so again, a lot of people might be familiar with sage because that's what a lot of people use to in a smudging stick or smudging ceremonies. But
Mhm.
there's other ones too. Okay, and so one of the reasons for talking about this is most people, when they're talking about it, they're only like looking at or doing something from one area and not incorporating the other three. So, like I said, most people think of the earth elements, crystals, things that we might be wearing, stuff like that, Pachamama, Mother Earth. And so spend a lot of time thinking about that or only using sage, right? When in ceremony and not even thinking about the sweetgrass, the tobacco, and the cedar, as well. And so that's why talking about fire, fire is one of the basic elements that a lot of people don't um, think about. So we can just talk about it a little bit, right? Um, okay, so let me pause right there too, Brad,
Take
because
a
I know
breath.
you're like
Take a
Jason,
breath.
just talk. Is
No,
there
no, this is
any
no.
questions or things you
Like I
got
said,
so far on it?
this is something that you're, feel very kind of close to and stuff like that. And so, um, like I said, I know that the elements, I think, like you said, crystals, earth, people think of that when it comes to the elements, earth, um, air, you're breathing the air, wind, people think of wind. But I think also like incense, I think also is kind of, wind, as well.
Well, because
Um,
it's transforming an element of earth with the element of fire into the element of air.
there's that alchemy you're talking about.
There's the
Exactly.
alchemy that I'm talking about. And that's why, again, the elements all work together,
Hmm.
right, in a specific way of transforming and being able to do different things. So, like you said, incense is that's a great example
Hmm.
because you're using two of the elements to get to the third.
Yeah. And then when things catch on fire, you use the water element to dump it out,
To
to put
dump
it
it
out.
to put it out. There you go,
Right.
right?
But yeah,
Yeah.
and water obviously is easy to, it's when it comes out of maybe your faucet or what you drink, and the lakes, the rivers, things like that, the oceans. But fire, I think, is one that is a little bit, like you said, it's one that people maybe don't think about quite as much because it's not, the other ones are kind of constantly around us. And so I think they're a little easier to see. Fire is not necessarily as easy because unless you're burning something or have a candle, you don't really think about fire so as much. You don't, I mean, the sun is fire, but people don't necessarily see the
I
sun
know.
and think fire.
I was going to
Like,
say because when you were saying it's not around us all the time, I'm like, but if we change our perspective, it is
right.
because, right, Papa Inti, the sun is fire,
Hmm.
right, and it's a physical manifestation of fire all around us all the time, right. The issue
Hmm.
is we don't see the fire; we just see light from the fire
Hmm.
because the sun is so far away from us. But the
Right.
reason we see light is because there's fire behind that light, right? In a way. And so, again, even though, you and I are in our offices right now, I don't see the sun on me directly, but the sun is still touching me. It's still coming through, the light is still coming through, even though my blinds are closed,
Hmm.
right? And so it's still providing light, it's still providing warmth, right? So again, when the sun goes down, it gets cooler, right? When the sun comes up, it gets warmer. And
Yeah.
so the sun, the element of fire is always with us, right? Even when we can't see it, it's still shining its light on earth. And so, that's a simple one where we can um, still honor, respect, have practices about it. So again, right? But most people think about earth, and people talk about grounding. Go
Hmm.
outside, put your feet in the ground every day, hug a tree, touch nature. Well,
Yep.
you can go outside and you can look up and feel the sun on your body.
Even if
It's
it's not there, just through the cloud,
even
it's
if it's
still the
not there,
warmth and
right?
the light still
Right.
coming.
Yeah, even better if you can get direct sunlight, but even if you can't, it doesn't matter because those solar rays are still coming through the clouds, right?
Hmm.
But taking a moment to sunbathe, if you will, uh, expressing gratitude to the sun that it came out today, that it's providing us with light, it's providing us with heat, right? That is a spiritual practice, even just for a few seconds of the day. Even if you're not outside, but you're just thinking about and kind of telepathing or beaming that gratitude and love to Papa Inti, he feels it, he knows it, right? And again, that's a spiritual practice, no different than going out and grounding yourself or taking a bath, right? Or doing things like that that can also be seen that way. So the element of fire is all around us. We just don't think about it or
Hmm.
realize it,
Yeah.
in that way. But interesting thing too, right, is that all of these elements actually have cleansing properties. And so I'll give you some little like practical examples, and they're traditions or things that people do that they don't even realize why they're doing it. So when I lived in Germany, one of the things that the Germans will do a lot of times is they'll air out their house. They'll open up a window so the air can come in and degas the house, cleansing with air. Okay. But they
Hmm.
will also take the bedding off the bed. So usually over there, it's not, they don't necessarily sleep the same way we do with sheets and blankets and everything. It's like a bottom sheet and then what's called a fetterdecker, which is like a duvet. It's like a down comforter, feather comforter. But often when they open the windows, they will actually put the fetterdecker in the window, kind of draping out on the outside so the sun can hit it and the air can hit it. Well, what that's doing is the sun and the air is actually cleansing and cleaning that energetically, but also in the 3D. So one thing that people don't realize, right, is one way that you can cleanse energy or that you can even cleanse, clothing is putting it in the sun, right? So a lot of times, like when people get a new crystal, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, I think on the last episode I showed my new little guy that I haven't done all my work on yet, right? A little pocket cranium here.
Hmm.
Well, for me to, work with him, I want to clean him. So I can use the element of water. I could put soap and water on. I can cleanse him that way. I could use air. I could burn incense or sage over him to help clear it. There's air.
Hmm.
I could put him in salt or selenite, which is using an earth element to help cleanse. I could set him
Could
in the
bury him.
sun. I
Yep.
could bury him in the earth,
Yep.
right, for a little while. I could set him in the sun because the sun will do the same thing, right? And so again, it's that there's all these elements that are out there and we can use them all.
Hmm.
But interesting thing too, like is, if you want to stop mildew or smell in your clothes, go set it in the sun. You can wash it all you want to wash it. You can put chlorine and everything else in it, and it doesn't usually work. But go set it out in the sun and see what happens. Right? So there's some of the power of the sun. Um, so that's one way, right? Is that the
Yeah.
sun is always around us from a fire standpoint. Um, Another way and things that I do, I mean, and again, people don't realize this, but when I was younger, I used to go camping a lot, and we had a cabin up in the hills, and so we would have fires outside. We'd
Hmm.
have campfires. And for anybody who's ever been in front of a campfire, there's some interesting things that happen, right? You get the warmth of the fire, the flames flickering around, and you can just sit and stare and get mesmerized looking at the flickering flames. Okay. So that's again, it's an association with the flame, and you can see how comforting and how good it feels. And I'm not talking just about, warming you up when you're feeling cold, but your whole body actually kind of changes because you're being drenched in the energy of that fire, right? And in fact, again, one way that you can kind of vision quest or do things is staring into the flame, using the flame as a way to do meditation as well. So that's another way that you can do it. So you can build campfires. And again, most of us now, unless you're out in the forest or at a campground, it's probably hard for us to really build fires. Most of our houses are not heated that way anymore. So another practical thing that you can do that's fire related are candles, right? And you can do them anywhere, anytime, small votive candles, big prayer candles, different kinds of things that you can do. But so how can you use them, right?
You
And
stare at the
again,
flames, obviously,
you can
like you
stare
just
at the
mentioned.
flames. That's one way to do it,
Hmm.
right? But you can also use flame as an offering. And I think this is one thing that a lot of people don't realize. When they think about offerings, they might leave, again, like earth elements. If you think about, especially like Eastern tradition shrines, if you go like India, Thailand, you'll usually see like offerings of fruit or other things like that, where they come and they provide an offering to certain beings, right? It's an act in the 3D to honor and give respect to the ancient ones, to the light beings, the spirits, the angels, the whatever terms you want to use, right? And so again, a lot of times I think we're kind of familiar with that, but a lot of people tend to go with earth element. But you can offer water as well, right? Um,
Hmm.
some of my things that I do here is water. There's an offering of water sitting right over here on my desk to a particular being, right? Who likes water. Um, but we can do the same with candles too, right? Is that you can offer candles as an offering as well. And again, where you see this in tradition as well. Again, sometimes in the Eastern traditions, you'll see candles along with food that are burning. But in the Western world, especially like in Catholic churches, you see this all the time. That's a
Hmm.
part of prayer candles. You go and you buy a prayer candle, you light it, you say a prayer, and you light the prayer candle for whatever, right? Maybe it's
Hmm.
it's to a particular saint, that you're honoring or asking something of, and you're bringing an offering, to ask for that. Um, and but we can do that in our own homes as well.
Hmm.
And one of the cool things, and I think I can share it here too, is that I really love about fire too. And with any offerings, because even like water offerings, when the offering is going down more than what um, normal evaporation is, it's being accepted, and it's been a good offering. And if you've ever done that with water or with rum or other things like that, people know what I'm talking about. But it's the same way with flame. When you're burning a flame that's in a glass container, there's no wind, but the flame is just flickering like crazy. It's like happy, happy, happy flame. The beings are around, and you know what you're doing, and your offering was good as well. And with any of these things, there's a bigger, deeper spiritual cosmic reason for making offerings. that we won't get into now. But on a 3D and our own spiritual level, it allows us to be reminded and to place attention on things. So if I light a candle, every time I walk by or I see that candle, it brings my attention and my awareness back to the reason why I lit that candle. And so it's an easier kind of 3D reminder to help us pause, even for a few seconds, to remember, maybe send gratitude again, or whatever the reason was that you were burning the candle or making whatever offering it might be. That's why we have things that statues and other things that remind us of certain beings or remind us of certain experiences or things like that as well. And like I said, it can be the same way when we do it this way. Now, I did bring another show and tell too, because this is one thing that I've learned recently as well, is even though fire is easy, and again, some people are like, I don't want to light candles, they're dangerous. Okay, don't be worried about burning your house down by having candles. I mean, it's as long as you're being safe. I mean, obviously, don't put them right next to curtains or things like that. But people have been
The
burning
flammable, yeah.
candles for millions of years, and their houses don't burn down. I mean, look at all the churches that have hundreds of candles going all the time, and they don't burn down, right? So don't worry about that, because I know sometimes people freak out about that, like, oh no, I can't have candles burning all the time. But I learned recently too that there are actually some earth elements that are associated with fire as well. And so here's one of them. It's a little, this is red jasper. In fact, it's a little palm stone that I have that I really like. In fact, I don't know if you looking on the video, you can kind of see there's a lighter spot in
Little
there.
spot. Mm-hmm.
You can't really see it, but um, when I stare at it for a while, I can see the universe in it. And that little light spot is like a sun with energy moving around it. Anyway, so fire can also be represented in certain of the even earth elements are associated with or closely associated with the fire element as well. So,
Yeah. I had
so
something
like
I
I
was
said,
going
it's
to
just
say,
yeah.
and I can't remember what it is because I got so enthralled by your Jasper. Um, there was something I was going to say there. I mean, but I don't remember where I was going with it. Um, oh, okay. So we talked the idea of you talked about the idea of seeing things and kind of the remembering things and keeping things alive, if you will.
Mhm.
Reminds me of a Disney movie. Um, and of course, the name of the movie has completely escaped me because I'm trying to remember it now. So, but essentially, it goes back to kind of the Mexican tradition, where you light candles, Day of the Dead sort of deal, and you light it for family members, for your for relatives and things like that who have gone before you. And as long as you remember and honor those ancestors of yours, they remain. They're still around or whatnot. But when you no longer remember them, when you don't have things to remind you of them, when the memory fades, as do they. And so that kind of came to mind when you talked about that, mentioned about the idea of seeing the candle or whatever it might be, kind of as a remembrance of what it is or who it is or whatever you're trying to accomplish there. So
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is, Brad. It's exactly what it is. Again, whether you are, following in like a Mexican tradition of, Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, a lot of the activities and things that go on there are to remember the dead, right? And so, again, it's a mind shift, I know, for a lot of people to think that just because, you know, I think we talked about my mother on the last episode, right? So very, very close uh, personal family member to me who is no longer embodied, right? She has left her body. She's still around. If I want to communicate with her, if I want to send her love and gratitude, right? I can't go buy her a gift and like hand it to her and say, "Here, mom, unwrap it," right? But what I can do is I can buy her gifts. I could make an offering of, one of her favorite things, oatmeal raisin cookies. That was her favorite kind of cookie. I could go buy an oatmeal raisin cookie and I could place that oatmeal raisin cookie on one of my altars, or it doesn't even have to be on an altar. And I can think of her and say, "Mom, I am offering this oatmeal raisin cookie for you. I love you. I'm so grateful that you're my mother. I love you. And I'm grateful for the protection, for the guidance, for the support that you continue to provide to me, even though you're no longer in the body." And I can leave that sitting there for 7 days. And it might seem like batshit crazy. Okay. But I'm going to tell you some batshit crazy stuff.
That's this whole
Spirit.
podcast. I
Well,
mean,
there you go.
maybe that's the subtitle of our podcast is batshit crazy. Like, well, spiritual path, you must be batshit crazy.
Spirits can smell. They can't taste because they don't have a body. They can smell. So when we use incense, when we use essential oils, when we burn scented candles, when we leave food offerings, that's pleasing to them. Because imagine if you haven't been able to eat an oatmeal raisin cookie in 20 years. Wouldn't it be nice to just smell one?
Could be a tease if you can actually eat it, though. If you just smell it, I mean,
They understand,
but
right?
yeah.
But any of these things that we're talking about, from a medicine wheel perspective, the offerings, the candles, the other things like that, it's a way, right, of honoring and respecting, and doing some act of, I don't want to even call it sacrifice, but of service, right? So for me to go and buy an oatmeal raisin cookie and just leave it on a very nice plate, right? In a part of my house. And maybe I light a candle with it too, or leave a little glass of water. Or maybe if, my mom's favorite drink was orange juice, maybe I leave a little bit of orange juice next to it. And I leave it for 7 days. Every time I see that, I will think of my mother. I'll be connected to my mother again, right? And that's a lot of the bigger purpose of this. And when I do that for her, don't you think she's going to want to do something for me? That's the Ine that we've talked about before. And again, I'm not doing that to get something, but I'm doing that as an offering of gratitude and love because I'm so grateful that she was my mother and the things that she taught me and that I get to spend, however many years, 30 some years with her. I can't even remember exactly how old I was when she died. Um, but those things, like I said, is part of this whole thing as well. So if you're grateful for the sun and you tell the sun that you're grateful for the sun, don't you think that he appreciates that? Right. And so anyway, we kind of got off on a little
No, that's no,
tangent there, I
that's
think, right? But
there's
um,
nothing wrong with that. Yeah, no.
but you're right. Like that movie that you're talking about, it's exactly right, Brad. I mean, if
Encanto, I think, is the name.
okay, I know which one you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah, because if we forget them, then they no longer kind of exist for us. But if we're doing things to remember, right? And
Mhm.
again, that's why people set up altars. That's why people pray. And again, it's like, I mean, a lot of people, they always pray to God or God the Father or Jesus, but there's lots of people that you can talk to. And I think we talked about that in a previous episode. Praying is just communicating. It's like who you want to talk to. um, at that point. So,
Yeah. So
mhm.
really good stuff here. So I try to incorporate all the elements in my office as well. I know you talked about different things you do as well. Um, Specifically when it comes to fire, I do a couple things. Candles. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious.
Mhm.
That's, I don't light them all the time. I don't have a constant going candle. But I light a candle when I feel called to do so.
Mhm.
I do have some light going on here. It's over this side
Yep.
with my salt lamp. Obviously, the salt itself is earth, but get the light from it. I mean, it kind of mimics the idea of light, fire, sun, and whatnot. The other thing that I do is, I mean, I burn sage, whatever. We talk about the fire that way, but not this past Christmas, but the Christmas before, my daughter painted me a picture, and I've hung this picture on my wall. And so, unfortunately, I can't show you the picture because it's hanging on the wall. But it is back here on this wall over here. It is a picture of a volcano erupting. And so we've got the fire, the lava coming out, rolling down the sides of it. And like when she gave it to me for Christmas present, I immediately like I love this. Like this, it has so much besides obviously the love she put into it, when she put into it, but just the meaning of the fire, things like that had to me. And so that's in my office here on the wall to remind me again of that fire element. I'm gonna make have that here with me all the time.
Mhm. Yeah, so there's lots of ways that you can incorporate, any of the elements. And again, this time we just talked about fire mainly, but maybe we'll do some other episodes on some of the
Yeah.
other points because I think, like I said, I think a lot of times we don't consciously think about it or don't know how to use three of the four because most people, it seems like, are only talking about Earth.
Hmm.
Um, and so, but it's the more that you are doing all of them every day, the better, because it just means you're becoming a more well-rounded person as well.
Boo,
Pun
boo,
intended.
boo,
If we go back to a medicine wheel.
boo.
But there
Bad
we
joke.
go. Yeah, bad joke, bad joke. But somebody's going to remember because of the bad joke. All
Yeah,
right.
that's probably true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, many different ways you can incorporate um fire element into your world, into your practice, whether it's literal fire, lighting candles. I can actually light fires here at my house. Again, we live out in the country, so I will
Hmm.
burn um sometimes we'll burn some scrap cardboard or something like that, or we will burn leaves, branches, things like that, from the trees and things that have fallen down, to kind of help return them to nature and things like that. So I can do that, and I have also sat around the fire and making s'mores and all that kind of stuff, but kind of staring into the fire, and you can see the dancing of the flames.
Hmm.
Um, and it's something I know that you didn't mention, but since we're going on the batshit crazy topic here, about the fact that fire is alive.
Hmm. Yes, it is. That's why it dances the way that it does.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So something
And
to sit
it's
with.
it's
And
a, I mean, all of the elements, but like I said, the elements working in conjunction with each other create an alchemy and a transmutation from one thing to the next. And the more that you think about this and realize it, it's just pretty amazing what actually goes on. And like we said, Brad brought up the thing about incense.
Mhm.
That's an example of it. The fire is an example of it. And we're kind of running out of time today, but the one that you just kind of referenced to as well is actually burning of things is
Mhm.
actually a very powerful practice as well of the fire transmuting or transforming things um, as well. So burn parties are a good thing too.
That's right.
Yeah.
And when we get into burning, bad habits and all that, all those kind of things, that's a whole nother thing. But fire is very powerful. Fire is very powerful. Often overlooked. But I think definitely an important aspect to bring into your spiritual practice.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. So that's all we got for this week. So again, think about the elements. If you're not incorporating the element of fire in your life, just think about some of the different ways that you can, and start connecting more with fire and in different ways that you can use it. And again, just because Brad or I do one thing or another, you have to intuitively figure out what works for you. And so just start figuring out, what's going to be a good way for you to start incorporating that into your everyday or every week life.
So go out and light something on fire and burn things down, and
Yeah, and
we will.
figuratively, we can do a whole nother episode on that one.
Yeah, and I'm sure at some point we probably will. But
Yep.
go out and have some fire, and we will catch you guys on the next episode.
All right. See ya.